Factories are built to function like machines, controlled and efficient, but when safety fails, they can easily become deadly, and on one November night in 2011, this is exactly what happened when Mark Bullock, a self-employed maintenance engineer, reported for duty at John Pointon and Sons, an animal rendering plant in Cheddleton, Staffordshire. Mark was called to fix a blockage in an industrial oven, one of the massive cookers used to process animal byproducts. The oven was massive, larger than a double-decker bus, and capable of handling 24 tons of waste. These ovens rely on high-pressure steam, heated to 280 degrees Celsius, to break down organic material. For my American audience, that's 536 degrees Fahrenheit. The fault was in line 4, one of 7 processing lines at the plant. To fix it, Mark had to enter a confined space inside the oven. He climbed inside to clear the blockage, but whilst he was in there, scalding steam meant to flow into another part of the system was mistakenly fed back into the oven. It should never have happened. The company had failed to isolate all potential steam sources before allowing anyone to enter. Somewhere in the interconnected system, a valve had not been properly shut off or sealed. This meant that the superheated steam and hot vapours, still under immense pressure, had a pathway back to the oven which Mark was inside. Trapped and exposed, he had no way to escape. In seconds, his body was covered in severe burns. By the time help arrived, 90% of his body was burned. He was rushed to the hospital, but his injuries were too severe, and he died the next day. The company was shut down pending an investigation. Investigators found that the company had never properly considered the risks of allowing workers inside these ovens. There was no clear plan to ensure steam was fully shut off from every possible source. They found that each oven at the facility was connected to collector vessels that gathered the foul vapour created during the cooking process. These vapours were directed into oxidizers for safe disposal. However, something went wrong. The oxidizer for line 4 had been turned off to allow the repair, but the oxidizer on the adjacent line 5 was still running. As Mark worked inside the oven, the oxidizer on line 5 was accidentally switched off. This simple mistake led to a deadly chain reaction. With the oxidizer on line 5 off, the steam produced by the cooker began to backfeed. It quickly filled the connected systems, and the trapped vapour had no escape route. Within moments, boiling hot steam rushed back into the oven where Mark was working. The lead health and safety executive, Inspector Wayne Owen, described the scene. He said, "It wasn't just a gradual feedback. It was quick, overwhelming, like a foggy night. The steam engulfed the confined space, trapping Mark in the intense heat. He had no way out. The company's failure to isolate the steam sources and conduct a proper risk assessment were fatal. A risk assessment for working inside the oven was never carried out. Instead, they relied on a general risk assessment for a different job, one involving boilers, not ovens filled with animal waste and superheated steam. The differences were crucial but overlooked. The oversight was compounded by the fact that only one supervisor was on duty for the entire site, where there should have been 2 for the production lines alone, along with another covering the rest of the facility. Without adequate supervision, Mark's safety was compromised. And this was not the first time the company had failed its workers. In 2007, John Pointon and Sons were fined £460,000 after another fatal accident at the same site, where a worker fell into a pit of animal waste and died. Despite this, the company had failed to learn from their mistakes, and once again, safety measures were not properly enforced. At Stafford Crown Court, John Pointon and Sons admitted their negligence, pleading guilty to breaching health and safety laws. They were fined £660,000 and ordered to pay £187,632 in costs for failing to ensure a safe working environment. Christine Knowles, Mark's partner of 27 years, reflected on the loss of her partner and their plans for the future. She said, "Mark was a great man, so full of life. He loved what he did, but he should have been safe doing it. Every company should make sure its workers are safe." The couple had dreamed of retirement by the water, a quiet life in their new canal-side property. Those dreams were shattered when Mark's life was taken so needlessly. May he rest in peace. In the early hours of the 4th of September 2014, the Unity Offshore platform, 112 miles northeast of Aberdeen, was just another shift for the crew working through the night. Among them was 43-year-old Sean Anderson, a scaffolder from Tyne and Wear. He was there to do what he had done many times before, carrying out maintenance work on the platform. Anderson, an experienced and well-respected worker, was employed by Cape Industrial Services, a contractor hired to assist with the upkeep of the installation. Sometime around 4 AM, something went horribly wrong. Whilst working on the lower deck, Anderson fell through an open section of the grating, plunging 72 feet into the freezing North Sea. An alarm was immediately raised, and a fast rescue craft was deployed. When rescuers reached him, he was face down in the water, unresponsive. He was pulled aboard, cold and without a pulse. Despite efforts to revive him, including emergency treatment from a paramedic who was on site that night, Anderson was pronounced dead. The cause? Severe head and chest injuries from the fall. Investigators would later determine that his death was entirely preventable. The open grating should not have been exposed in a way that allowed a worker to fall through it. BP Exploration, the company operating the Unity platform, had failed to put proper safety measures in place. At trial, BP argued that a hard barrier around the area should have been enough to prevent access, but prosecutors made it clear that Anderson's death proved it wasn't. Other measures could and should have been taken. Nearly a decade later, in July 2023, a jury at Aberdeen Sheriff Court found BP guilty of breaching health and safety laws. The company was fined £650,000. Prosecutor Debbie Carroll stated, Sean Anderson's death was entirely foreseeable and could have been avoided if BP had taken all reasonably practiced precautions. She pointed to serious failures in how BP managed open gratings on the platform. For Anderson's family, the verdict was little comfort. His wife Jane spoke of the devastating loss, remembering him as a genuine lad who would do anything for anyone. They had been married for 17 years and had 4 children together. BP acknowledged the court's decision, issuing a statement that offered condolences, but little else. They said, "This was a tragic incident. While we know nothing can be said to change the pain felt by Sean Anderson's family and friends, our deepest condolences remain firmly with them to this day. I can't even begin to imagine how scary those seconds were as he fell into the freezing sea below in the pitch black. May he rest in peace." On the morning of May the 29th, 2017, Rosa King, a 33-year-old zookeeper, was carrying out her daily duties at the Hamerton Zoo in Cambridgeshire, England. An experienced and highly respected keeper, King had worked at the zoo for 14 years, dedicating her life to the care and conservation of animals. Her passion for wildlife was evident from an early age. Her parents recalled that from the moment she was first sat on a horse, at the age of 2, her future was set. Her work at the Hamerton Zoo involved looking after a variety of animals, but she was particularly devoted to the big cats. Colleagues described her as knowledgeable, professional, and extremely safety conscious. She regularly worked long hours, often beyond her scheduled shifts, because she absolutely loved her job. But on May the 29th, something went terribly wrong. At approximately 10 AM, just before the zoo opened to the public, King entered the tiger enclosure to clean the viewing windows. The zoo housed a Malayan tiger named Seakip, a rare and endangered species. Protocol required that a metal slide and 2 gates be closed to separate the tiger from any keepers working inside. However, on this occasion, all 3 barriers were found to be open. The attack was not witnessed by staff, but a visitor spotted King's body on the ground from the public viewing area and immediately raised the alarm. Keepers rushed to the scene, distracting Seakip with pieces of meat in an attempt to lure him away from King. Armed police and paramedics arrived, but neither a tranquilizer nor firearms were used. It was clear from the moment she was discovered that she had not survived. King was officially pronounced dead at 11:46 AM. The cause of death was recorded as traumatic injuries, including a severed spinal cord. An inquest revealed that the slide, which separated the tiger's paddock from a run leading to the tiger house, had been left open. Both a wooden and metal gate leading to the enclosure were also found to be unlocked. A police investigation confirmed that there were no mechanical faults with the gates or slides. Instead, it was determined that King had entered the enclosure unaware that it was not secure. A zoological consultant who testified at the inquest described lax safety protocols at the zoo. He pointed out that the vertical metal slide was not particularly secure and could potentially be lifted by a strong tiger. Despite her extensive experience, King was working alone at the time of the attack, and there was no system in place requiring staff to check in with colleagues whilst working in high-risk areas. Following her death, Hamerton Zoo introduced a new procedure to ensure that keepers remain in constant contact whilst working in enclosures. Rosa King's parents, Peter and Andrea King, described their daughter as someone who had been living her dream. They said, "She followed her dreams, and it wasn't very often you wouldn't see her with a smile on her face." The zoo released a statement calling her death a tragic accident, and said, "A day doesn't go past when the staff and management of Hamerton Zoo don't think of her." The tiger sea kip was not euthanized, a decision supported by her family. As always, this is not an AI channel, I do everything myself, and if you appreciate my work, subscribe, and if you want to go the extra step to support the channel, maybe consider becoming a member. Let me know what you think about them in the comments below, and as always, thank you for watching.